Len Holm is an affiliate instructor within the University of Washington's Construction Management Department, where he's been teaching classes for the past 29 years, during which time he's written 12 books. Today, he's coming on to discuss his latest book on construction scheduling. Hello, Len. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Len.
Good morning, Sam.
Great. Well, Len, help us to understand your background and how you connected with UW's Construction Management Department.
Well, I always say I'm first and foremost a carpenter, Jeff. My dad was a builder. I grew up in Hoquiam building houses, went to the UW to be a doctor, and that didn't pan out. And I discovered this department called building construction at that time. And that just fit, it just fit me perfect. I've been involved with the program now for 40 years, literally, in some capacity. I used to guest speak a lot, and just like I think you have done similar. And I've always volunteered to be a professor, was told many times I wasn't qualified to do that. And eventually I got the gig. And so I've been involved with the UW-CM program for a very, very long time.
Awesome. And Len, I'm curious. So what classes, excuse me, have you taught here at UW, and what is the hope that your students come away with?
Well, I've taught 13 different topics, Sam. Most professors, as you know, as a student, teach the same topic over and over and over again. And I ended up being the person who was always the fill-in person. So I got a lot of topics that nobody else wanted to teach. I've taught project management more than anything, probably 30 quarters worth of project management, because that's who I am. I'm a project manager. Taught estimating quite a bit, and construction contract documents. It's, what do students get out of my classes? They get very much a real world perspective, because I'm out on the job site in the morning and I come in to the classroom in the afternoon and my thumb is all beat up, or something happened on the job, and I share those real experiences. My classes are not theory based. They are really what happens out on the job site. So I sort of, what's the phrase? I walk the talk, I guess. I talk the walk, I walk the talk.
Okay. And quick follow-up question. I was wondering, what's been your favorite class to teach?
Probably the Capstone class, one that Jeff is aware of. I created that class in it would be the spring of 1994, I think. At that time, there was only one other program in the country that had a Capstone class. So I created that from scratch, and it ended up being the most rigorous, the most difficult, the most admired Capstone class in the country. Many schools try to copy our program, our class, but they cannot, because we're in Seattle. We have all this wonderful industry support. We have construction job sites right outside of all of our doors. And so the Capstone class probably is my most favorite. Also the most difficult for students and professors, but probably my favorite.
Okay. It's kind of a pivot here. So I hear you have a new book coming out, and I was wondering if you give us a little rundown of kind of what that's all about.
Sure. I just had a scheduling book published. It's about my 12th or so. I always have a book in progress. I have a third edition of my PM book I'm working on right now. I have a new book on quality control. Did a new edition on my estimating book last year, but my scheduling book is my newest. I was a scheduler, a professional scheduler right out of college. I worked for a company called Bechtel, one of the largest EPC firms in the world. And I was a scheduler there. And then when I went to work for BAW here in Seattle, I also did a lot of scheduling for BAW as well. So I've always loved scheduling. I haven't taught it at the UW. I've taught it professionally for contractors. And so I chose scheduling because as I went down my list, it was about the one I hadn't written on yet. So it's a topic I thoroughly enjoy. But the book was written again from a job site trailer perspective, not from a theoretical perspective.
Okay. And I'm curious, what inspired you to start kind of writing books? Like, what inspired you to do your first book?
That's a great question, Sam, and you'll appreciate this as a student. Many professors require students to buy books and then you only use 2 or 3 chapters out of it. And it costs you $200, you know? And I was a student 3 times at the UW and with with pretty shallow pocketbook. And so the first book I wrote was called The Project Manager's Toolbox, and students bought it on the Ave, just it was unpublished. But all my books I wrote so that students would use the entire book from cover to cover and feel like they got their money's worth out of it. And the publisher that I'm now writing with, John Schaufelberger and I, they produce books for about half the cost that other publishers do. So it's a reasonably priced book that I, as a student, would buy. The other thing, Sam, is I write the books so that when a student is done with a class, they can take that book to work with them. And it's a tool that they can put up on their shelf and hopefully use in their professional careers. So it's a tool in the classroom and a tool on the job site.
Awesome.
So it almost sounds like you heard you say one time before is, written for, from the mindset or of a carpenter rather than a professor. So really applicable to guys in the job trailer to use.
Correct, Jeff. I write, my education. I'm not a PhD and I was not educated as a writer. So I write as I talk. It's the same way I teach. I don't make up big words that I can't pronounce. And so my books are very readable. And students always compliment, as do students all over the world that use the books. They say, geez, this book was very readable. And so, so I don't pretend to be somebody that I'm not.
So if you're doing it as you're kind of talking the field, I'm sure you've taken the explicitives out of the book, though.
Yeah, probably not in the first draft, but by the time it gets a cover on it, yeah, it's all been cleaned up.
Great. So do you have a favorite book?
I write so much, and writing books has become a hobby. It's not a profession. There's no money in it. But I write so much that I'm always reading my own books. And so, I would say that my favorite book today is the scheduling book that got published here recently. And but next year, I think it'll probably be my quality control book. So I used to study political science a lot, so I used to read a lot along those lines. But I don't read much outside of construction books. Kind of boring.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So a little bit of trivia here over my shoulder here in that back corner. That is the 1994 BCON graduating class where we, I guess now are the first ones to take your capstone class. So there's some people up there, Ethan and Rob, who both now teach in the CM department. But so we get that little bit of trivia, I guess the first group through with your capstone. And I do recall you showed some grace because my floppy disk, or maybe it was a hard disk at the time, crashed with all that information on it 2 days before our final presentation. And I was struggling, how do you recover off a crashed floppy disk? But you gave a little grace. I gave my presentation. It all went well. And what I appreciated from that capstone too is you brought people in from the industry. We had heads of construction companies there, schedulers. We brought our material, presented it to them. They beat us up a little bit heading out the door. Do you really know your numbers? Does this schedule work? I think that I had paving working probably a little outside the schedule of when paving might want to be done. And someone beat me up on that a little bit. As a dirt guy, I should have known better, but I was a little loose in my schedule, and it's always sunny in late October. So we don't have to worry about, rain here in Seattle. So I appreciated your classes firsthand. So finally, if people wish to connect with you, learn about your books, what's the best way for people to do so?
Probably through my business email, homecon, HOLMCON at AOL.com, real creative, home construction. I have a construction consulting business and I do a lot of owner's rep work. I'm working on 3 projects now. So that's probably the one that's most accessible. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, but mostly just to see what my kids are doing. So I don't really use those that much. A couple of things could I input, Jeff, because you brought it up about your photo back there. You came from a very unique class. There are half a dozen or more people who are in your class who are now owners of construction companies and are very, very, you mentioned Ethan and Rob, but there's several people, Gormley, who came out of your class who were very, very successful for some reason. And the other thing about Capstone, you lost your disc. Life happens in Capstone. It's weird. Capstone brings emotions and all these things that are happening in life all comes to a pinnacle in Capstone. And the industry support I had was tremendous. And I'm not teaching Capstone. Last year I taught Capstone. I'm not teaching it this year. And typically I have industry people getting a hold of me in the summer or fall, wanting to make sure that they get on my Capstone list for the next spring. I mean, they're just standing in line. They're all people like yourself, Jeff, who are professionals who want to give back. And they come there and they run the student through the hoops for 20 minutes, but then they stand up and they shake their hand. And so it's an honor to be involved in that. And the Capstone, the industry support I've had is just unmeasurable. It's just been fantastic.
And you go back to the thing about I felt our class was really great. It's hard to compare since I don't see the others going through, but yeah, we had still people from my CM class. I got a question, I reach out to, still a half dozen, then we get together, but the connections that UW provided from that program that continues on and the things they do with through the department and they last a lifetime. They really do. And I've been the beneficiary of that still today to be able to reach out to you or to others to come in to speak to my classes and just answer professional questions.
Great.
Well, good. Thanks for coming on with us today and sharing it. We'll put a link to your book out there. Hopefully everyone goes out and buys it, takes it to the job trailer and shares it with their superintendents or foremans or people interested in construction.
Great. Enjoyed spending the morning with you guys.
It's great to meet you, Len.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Sam. Good luck in your academic endeavors.
I appreciate it.